We're looking at the WISE model for the Philippines team, with most bookkeepers eventually wanting to be accountants. Or do most bookkeepers want to be accountants in your experience, or are they just happy staying as bookkeepers and being promoted to bookkeeping manager?
So with that one, we've had exactly that experience, Ken. And there's a couple of answers to that, and it sort of partly falls on what Ed said. First of all, you should really do your performance reviews. So if you build the Philippines team, it's like absolutely critical that one-on-one, you treat them just like any other team or individual and have performance appraisal, and obviously ask them what their aspirations are. So if you're a bookkeeper now, do you see yourself being an accountant? Like, what are your aspirations? So obviously, ask them. And you will find, Ken, in the WISE Vault, there's a journey that we've designed for people in the Philippines. So there's a journey that we built that goes from a junior bookkeeper, if you like, right through team leader. Now, we have a team leader in the Philippines, and she's been with us close to 5 years now. And she made the team leader, but purely because she is a leader as well. So she wanted to be a leader, but her KPIs, her interpersonal skills, the way that she manages the other staff, came across to us that she is a team leader. So, sort of two things, a bit like Ed said, some people might want to be a finder or a minder, but, perhaps they're just a grinder. You almost have to, if I say it, understand them more than they understand themselves. A bit like a good sports coach will know who to play at full forward and who to play at full back. But the second point is they want to be able to do it, because if they don't have the passion to do it, there's no point in them putting in a seat that, you're promoting them to something that obviously they don't want to do. But we actually have had that case where we've had a couple of bookkeepers who started out as bookkeepers, and then after we got to know them and talking to him and having the performance appraisal, to my surprise, they said, "You know what, Jamie, I've seen what the other accountants do, doing all the GST and the tax. I'd love to be a tax accountant with the accountants and not bookkeeping." So, but that's come later on. But that's only become because we did the performance appraisal and we actually asked them. But then, obviously they've got to tick all the boxes to get to that point. So you certainly will. Hopefully that answers the question anyway. Ed might have something to add.
Leadership is a bit like parenting. Okay, so you've got to know your children pretty well. And sometimes, they say, "I don't want to go to sleep," and you know that they need to go to sleep. You got to just, lead, because if you let them lead, they'll stay up all night, and then the next day they're a rotten little thing. They haven't had any sleep. So it's a bit like that, So often someone will say to you, I'm a bookkeeper, but I want to be an accountant. You got to drill into why they say that. And sometimes they might say it because they want to earn more money. Sometimes,
yeah, that's right.
They may say it because they want to, it's prestigious, or sometimes they say it because they think that that's what you want to hear. You want to hear that. You got to drill right into why they say what they say, because if you put somebody into a position that they're not naturally good at, you're setting them up for a fall. I mean, there's not that much difference between a bookkeeper and an accountant, but there's a huge difference between a grinder and a minder, right? And often, grinders tell me they want to be a minder, a manager. And a manager has to have really good interpersonal skills, very good communication skills. And the managers earn more money. So if a grinder says they want to be a manager, you've got to find out why they do that. And we've had a case here where that's what happened, and we had to sit the person down and say to them in very nice terms and lead them that they're not a manager, and that, if we did put them into that role of a manager, that, they will fail and then they'll leave. Because once you promote someone to a level, you can't come back, because it's all, losing face and all the rest of it. And it's pretty horrendous. Mm-hmm. So you set them up for a fall, and then they'll leave, they'll work for somebody else and apply for a client manager role, and they'll fail there. And then they'll leave a wake of failure behind them, and you haven't helped that person. And the thing that you should do is which is what we did, was to explain to this person that they're really, 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 really good in their job. They're not a good client manager. We identified it because they wanted to earn more money. So we put a a bonus scheme in place. So the more productivity they produce, the more money they can earn. So if you identify what the real thing is, right, then you can address it. But if you don't, and you just do what they tell you that they want, then, and you put them there, generally, like often someone will say, I want more money, and you give them more money, but that doesn't address the problem. And then that might mask it for a few months, and then they're back to the problem that they're feeling. If you don't address that problem, you just pay them more money, you put a Band-Aid on it. Eventually, if you don't fix the problem, that comes out again, and then they'll end up leaving anyway, and you paid them more money and they've left because you haven't addressed the problem. And so you've got to get down to the problem, and then that takes leadership. All right, so you can't just ask them what they want. Obviously, you have to ask them what they want, but you have to drill into what really is the problem, right? And that's not easy. That's very difficult.
Great advice. And Ed, you've been talking in your language in this session around P&L activities versus balance sheet activities, and also working in Quad 1 and Quad 2. Would you be able to just reiterate what you mean by working in P&L versus working in balance sheet activities?
Sure. So someone who works in P&L says this to me: it's quicker if I just did it myself. It's more efficient if I just jump in there and do it myself. Someone who works in a balance sheet activity, he says, if I spend the time to train this person, then eventually they're going to be able to do it for me. All right. So working in a balance sheet is in an investment in your balance sheet. If you're prepared to invest in your balance sheet, and in your balance sheet, assets are your staff. So the person who works in a balance sheet is prepared to spend the time training their staff. The person who works in the P&L just does the work themselves. So when a client comes through the door, like doing an iReturn, they say to me, it's quicker if I just did it. If I just do it, it's quicker. By the time I train somebody else to do the iReturn, I could have just done it. And, this person, I'll use this example. He said to me, see, Ed, I've earned $1,000 in 1 hour. And I said, how did you? And he was really, really happy about that. And I said, how did you do that? And he says, well, I did 5 iReturns at $200 each, and it took me an hour. Isn't that great? And I said, no, that's terrible. Because this guy he's 63 years old, and he's still working his P&L. And because he's never invested into his balance sheet, so he's never trained somebody else to do it. So now he's 63 and he's still working in a P&L. All right. Now, also Quad A activities, Quad 1 activities, which are important and urgent. Right. Important and urgent is like if your car breaks down in the middle of the highway, it's important and urgent to get rid of, to move it on. But if you work in Quad B, which is important but not urgent, important and not urgent is if you service your car, it's important but it's not urgent. So if you service a car, it wouldn't break down, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So Quad B, which is important and not urgent, is your balance sheet activity. So often it's important but it's not urgent to invest. So whether you invest in the super fund or invest into shares or property or invest into your business, which is technology systems and training people, right? That's investing into your balance sheet. And often people don't do that. And that's Quad B, which is important but not urgent. So we don't do that. Same as exercising is important, but it's not urgent. That's a Quad B activity. And if we don't exercise, we get bad health, which is a Quad A activity, which is important and urgent. So if you get a sickness, it's important and urgent to deal with it. But if you work in Quad B, which is do some exercise, which is not urgent, so nobody does it, but you'd avoid getting sick or staying healthy, if that makes sense.
Absolutely, it does.